Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the next FP&A Trends global webinar. It's really global. It's actually focused on UK and France FP&A board, but we have representatives from 41 countries today. Obviously, the majority of people are coming from France and UK, but we are welcoming our guests from around the globe. The subject of today's presentation, the subject of today's discussion is FP&A of the future, or how to adapt to the new normal. My name is Larissa Malnichuk, and I'm Managing Director of International FP&A Board and FP&A Trends Group. Let me very briefly update you on the agenda for today. So we are going to look at the new normal FP&A from 5 different facets. We will start from scenario planning with very practical example, then digital transformation for cash flow. What does it mean? We will look at digital FP&A and how to move to the leading analytical stage. And of course, we will look at the role of modern technology for FP&A of the future. We will look at the latest trends in skills and roles, or latest trends in FP&A recruitment. We'll have time for conclusions and recommendations, and obviously for Q&A session as well. Let me very briefly introduce you to FP&A Trends Group and International FP&A Board. I'm a former practitioner. I always worked in FP&A. I was leading global FP&A teams. And with FP&A Trends Group, which is my own company, we decided to look at FP&A globally, and also from the point of view, what are the latest developments and best practices in FP&A. So a lot of travel for the last 4 years, 27 cities, 16 countries, 4 continents. You can see all of them here. We continue to travel globally, digitally at the moment, because obviously the situation is such in the world that we have to adjust to the new normal. Nevertheless, at FP&A Trends Group, we already had first face-to-face meeting, first new normal FP&A board in Copenhagen on the 22nd of September, which went really well. Let me remind you about a number of subjects that we discussed in the UK and also in France over the last 4 years. So it was about team building and beyond budgeting and transformation and zero-based budgeting and so on so far. You can see all of this here, so all of those important subjects. And today we are going to talk about FP&A for the new normal. We started this global research project, and we started those meetings at exactly this subject at the end of June, and we already discussed this in Asia and in Australia, and we discussed this in many countries of Europe, and just 2 weeks ago in the Middle East and Africa. Now this is the time to understand what is happening at other parts of the globe, and what is happening in particular in the UK and in France. This is our very professional and very global panel. People are joining us from different continents and different countries. Let me start introduction. The first one is Jose Nazaria, who is FP&A Director, Global Consumer Banking at Citi. Jose is a member of our New York FP&A board, but for the first time we met in London, where Jose also worked for Citi Group. And today's presentation will be about importance of scenario planning and some practical examples. Jose, welcome to Digital FP&A Board.
Thank you, Larissa, for inviting me. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Jose. Then our second panelist is joining us from Germany, from Cologne, Dr. David Morera, who is Chief Financial Officer at Motesque. David is a very experienced finance practitioner with interest and transformation, interest in transformation, a lot of transformation, a lot of practical experience. And David's today's subject is about cash flow management. David, you're welcome.
Thanks, Larissa. Hello, world. So my name is David, and I'm glad to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, David. Our next panelist is joining us from Canada, Matt Ahmudin, Director, Financial Planning and Analysis and Accountability at Government of Ontario. Very interesting to see the representative not of classical business, but government organization, and a lot of transformation happening at government organizations as well. Matt is very experienced not only in finance, but also in artificial intelligence, machine learning. He's a member of our Toronto FP&A board, but also a member of our artificial intelligence machine learning committee. And today, Matt is going to talk about digital FP&A. Matt, you're welcome.
Hey, everyone, and happy to be here. Look forward to speaking with all of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Matt. Our next panelist is a representative of our sponsor organization, SAP, Chris Grundy, Director of Product Marketing at SAP. Chris has a lot of experience and he's coaching of his team on analytics, and obviously a lot of experience around the globe on the latest case studies on using technology. Very happy to have Chris here. We developed so many interesting projects together, such as survey and white papers, and SAP supported us at many FP&A boards around the globe. Chris, you're welcome.
Thank you, Larissa, and it's great to be here today.
Thank you so much. And finally, we have Michael Deller, who is joining us from Paris, and he's a director at Michael Page over there. We met at the opening of France FP&A board just recently. We managed to have only 2 meetings so far. Some of the meetings were delayed. Michael is a very experienced recruitment consultant, and obviously the subject for today's presentation will be about the latest trends and developments in FP&A, recruitment for FP&A for the new normal. Michael, you're welcome.
Hi, Larissa. Hi, everyone. And I'm clearly highly proud to be part of this international webinar.
Fantastic. So you can see that we are joining from so many different places. And I'm based in the UK in the same way as Chris Grundy. I'm based just outside of London. And Chris is in Manchester at the moment. So you can see that so many countries and so many experiences as well. Very quick update on the household items. So this is the 90 minutes webinar. We will make it as practical and as participative as possible. So we will have 4 polling questions, and I would like to ask you to participate at those polls. It will be very easy with this technology. So please vote, please share your experience. At the end of the meeting, we will have a Q&A session. And we are ready for as many questions as you have. Obviously, it's all the subject of timing. That is why if we are not able to answer all of your questions, we will distribute those questions between our panelists, and we will get back to you in approximately 1 week time with the answers. And of course, networking is so important. So you are welcome to connect, to link in with our presenters, with our panelists. Please identify and mention this webinar. And of course, at the end of the meeting, please don't go away. There will be opportunity for you to do survey and to share with us what we can do better. Let us start. But before we start, I really would like to say thank you so much to our partners and sponsors, to those organizations that supported us for a number of years for our face-to-face meetings, and now supporting us for our digital journey as well. So our technology partner, SAP, one of the world's leading provider of modern FP&A solutions. SAP, thank you so much for your great support. And our recruitment sponsor and partner, Michael Page, one of the world's leading professional recruitment consultancies. Thank you so much for your support around the globe, and in particular for this webinar. My quick introduction, FP&A of the new normal, what it is. You know this model. I hope that majority of you are already familiar with this model that was developed by International FP&A Board. We don't have time to go into the details, but obviously analytical transformation is a journey. And those companies are lucky that at the moment are in between of advanced and leading stages of analytical maturity. And you will see that today's presentation, it's all about those steps, how to move to the leading state. Very quickly, I would like to update you on the leading state. So new normal FP&A, it's all about reforecasting and replanning on demand. It's all about real-time and multi-dimensional scenario planning. It's all about leading internal and external business drivers and three-way modeling for cash flow. It's all about predictive and prescriptive analytics, digital FP&A, sometimes using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and of course, real-time collaboration and self-service flexible systems. And of course, human intelligence and artificial intelligence, they should be balanced. They're going hand in hand. And leading FP&A business partnering is so important. So today we are looking at 5 facets of new normal FP&A: scenario planning, cash flow management, digital FP&A, FP&A technology, and skills and recruitment. So this is our plan for this 90 minutes. And the first facet is scenario planning. That definitely should be quick, flexible, real-time, and multidimensional. And I would like to introduce to you our first presenter, Hussein Azaria, who is FP&A Director, Global Consumer Banking and Citi. It's all about scenario planning in your company. Jose, before we start, I remember our first meeting in London, and I remember that more than 5 years ago, you introduced driver-based planning model. Obviously, this is the way to be now. We are looking forward to hear how you're doing this.
Thank you so much, Larissa. So yes, we've known each other for 5 years while I was working in the UK, still for my company Citibank. And yes, scenario planning has and will continue to be in the near future, for the reasons I will explain, important for FP&A, and in particular for the banking sector where I am. So as Larissa was mentioning, I'm currently FP&A and CCAR Director for Global Consumer Banking for Citibank, so one of the largest banks in the world, and I'm currently based out of New York. So just flipping to the first page and you know, trying to explain what CCAR is. Majority of you know this as stress testing. So on the left-hand side, you see the U.S. unemployment rate, and you will see 2 shaded areas, right? So the financial crisis, 08 to 09, where you know, we had significant increase in unemployment in the U.S. And most recently, for different reasons, we have COVID, and in the U.S., the unemployment, as well as in other countries in the world, shot to almost 14%. So why am I showing this? I'm showing this because going back to 08 and 09, when the financial crisis hit, we in the financial sector were obliged by regulation called Dodd-Frank to design processes that make us reduce risk, make the financial system more stable, and make the global markets safer. What does that legislation make us do? They oblige all the banks in the US to perform stress testing, or if you want to call it, scenario planning. It's just another fancy word for scenario planning. And we need to do this twice a year from a regulatory perspective. If not, we cannot disburse back dividends or share buybacks to our regulators. This has become even more important in the second financial crisis or crisis that we've had, that is the COVID crisis. This made us more resilient and more prepared for this new kind of crisis, not a financial crisis, but a health crisis. Melissa, you want to shift to the next page, please? Okay, so what does CCAR or scenario planning mean? So the banks in the US and across the world are obliged to do scenarios, right? In the specific case of the US, the Federal Reserve obliges us to do 9 scenarios, and these 9 scenarios need to be run, the financials, the review and challenge, the documentation, the other elements, in 45 days. So 6 of these scenarios are internal, 3 of them are external, meaning they come from our regulators, and they have several degrees of severity, as you can see there. There's a base case, there's a stress, there's a more stress, there's sensitivity. So it's a multitude of scenarios that we have to run in a short term. Next page. So how do we do with it? So the left side, you will see in a very, very simplistic way, the technology that we use, and the right-hand side, the business engagement or continuous engagement. So what we do in the technology front, we use Ruby and Citi Risk as our key infrastructures to run models. So Ruby for everything that is related to P&L and balance sheet, Citi Risk to cost of credit, so losses that the bank incurs. So these two tools are fed by models that by themselves use macro drivers or business drivers, pricing, inflation, FX, GDP. These two then are run, and we'll walk you through briefly what does that mean, and then it feeds into the submission to the regulators that needs to be done in 45 days. Most importantly is also the engagement within business, FP&A, risk, and treasury. It's a continuous engagement and review and challenge and documentation and back and forth that happens in that time window, even before that, but it's very intense, and we're currently doing that. So we have to submit actually this year's results in about 15 days. Next page. So I talk about Ruby. So Ruby is the tool that does the forecasting for us for everything that is balance sheet and P&L except cost of credit. It does almost 2 trillion of our balance sheet, revenues and expenses, for the next 16 months in less than 1 hour. And Citi has 50 countries, 50 currencies, almost 30 line of businesses, and a multitude of line items. So it's a very complex tool that allows us to do all of this in less than 1 hour. Before, we didn't have that. It was Excel or something very rudimentary. So this was implemented 5 years ago when I met Larissa, and this is a tool that allows us to do all of this. Almost 200 complex econometric models are run, 8,600 product globalies, and 250 million synthetic transactions. So it's a very complex tool. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this tool uses or has in its inside models, right? So this is just a simple structure of a model, of a cards model in this case, that as you can see, it has nodes, it has inputs, it has outputs. So literally what we do is we have this coded in the tool, we feed them with macro variables or business variables, being it new sales or attrition or other elements that we have from history. And the process runs and then it gives an output. In this case, end of period balances or loans for our card businesses around the globe. Okay, so this is our keystone for everything that we have in terms of forecasting. Next page. So what are the conclusions out of this, right? So the process is quick. As I mentioned, it's less than 1 hour to run all the process. It's pretty flexible. So 9 scenarios across 50 countries for all line of businesses. It's real time. All the calculations are real time. I don't need to wait for the next day to the system to refresh or download anything. And it's multidimensional. It's complex models across macro variables, business drivers. So in one spot or one tool alone, I have everything that I need to run these models. Now, this has allowed us to meet not only the enhanced regulatory framework that the Fed, as I mentioned, in 2008, 2009, obliged us to do, but also identify and be prepared for future recessions. Actually, this one, right? And has made the business more resilient. So this has been, as I mentioned, of extreme importance during the COVID pandemic, because it has allowed us to adapt to the quick changing environment that we are all living in. You know, close shops, open shops, economies open, economies close. Are we going to have a vaccine? Are we going to have a vaccine? So you can imagine that week after week, the view of the economy in the next couple of months has changed. And this has been really important. Now, what have we learned and what is next? We have learned from the pandemic a lot of information. Customer behavior to this kind of stress, impact of government decisions, so the government stimulus, and as well as our own reaction to all of this. So it's been a big learning experience for us, and we will incorporate that in the process to improve our forecasting models and be prepared for, I hope not so soon, the next recession, being it a pandemic or not. Again, I hope not. This has been also allow us to ingrain in the process, this process in our day-to-day decision making of the company. It's not just a 2 times a year exercise, it actually is ingrained in the way we make our decisions, in the way we communicate, in the way we actually invest as well, right? So we use all of these learnings to improve our business and make the business safer, and also give more value to our customers because we are more safer. Okay, and I hope this helped. So I'll open to any questions from anybody.
Thank you so much, Jose, for sharing your practical case study with us. Very interesting to see how globally you run those scenarios practically in real time through drivers, multidimensionally. This is the best practice, definitely. And also it's implemented through your internal system. So wonderful solution, very integrated. David, I would like to ask you to give your key takeaways and some commentaries.
Sure, thanks, Larissa. So this is incredible good example given by Jose on how Citi forecasts the balance sheet revenue and expenses for the next 6 months in less than 1 hour. And adding to that, so in my previous experience at Zalando, for example, I participated in the building of a full digitalization of our planning processes, which included also 6 work streams with more than 200 people involved for 17 countries. We integrated 600,000 articles for 30 million active users and for about 2,500 brands. And now during the pandemic, we can see how the market capitalization of Zalando increased significantly. That meant that they were fully prepared.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, David. I think it's a great timing now to go to our first polling question and just to double check what is happening in your world in terms of the scenario planning. So I'm opening the first polling question, and it's all about the best description for your scenario planning. I'm launching the poll, and I would like to ask you to start voting. So what is your scenario planning process? What is the best description for you? Please select one of the following. Scenarios are played in real time. Scenarios are run in less than 1 day. We can play scenarios, but it's very time consuming, or we are unable to play scenarios at all. So if you can continue to vote, obviously, this is a great checking point of your analytical transformation in the company. Quicker you can play scenarios and more multidimensional they are, the better it is. Let us continue to vote. I can see that more than 50% of you voted just a few seconds, and I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing the results with everyone. So we can see that the majority of you can play scenario, but it's really time consuming. Interestingly enough, this is the trend that we see around the globe. 6% of you are able to play scenarios in real time, and it's very consistent with other countries and regions as well. And 7% unable to play scenarios at all. 12% can play in less than 1 day, which is not too bad. Jose? Any surprises here?
No. I'm not surprised at all, because talking to our competitors in the US and from my previous experience, that is actually true. We are built, or the companies are built, to have one scenario. That is the BAU scenario. When we go into the scenario planning, due to constraints of time, due to constraints of technology, that's where problems can come. And that's what we had 5 years ago or more. We didn't have this tool. So having a tool helps, but more than the tool is also the process and the mindset. It has to be both together. But I'm not surprised at all that you have these kind of results.
It's a journey for many of us, and obviously analytical transformation has some important steps. Thank you so much for your commentary. I'm hiding the results, and this is the timing to go to the next. It's a timing to go to the next slide. So the second facet of the new normal FP&A, we just discussed the importance of playing scenarios, but scenarios are important to play three-way. It's not only profit and loss account, but obviously cash flow management is so important. It's so important also to understand what will happen with balance sheet. David, this is your stage at the moment. It's all about cash flow management and what should be the key points for and best key performance indicators, the best steps for creating of the best-in-class cash flow management system. Dr. David Morera, Chief Financial Officer at Motesque. And David, you're going to share experience from a number of companies you worked for. You're welcome.
Thanks, Larissa. Yeah, so next slide, please. Yeah, this one. So yeah, I'm glad to be here today to share with you my journey reimagining cash flow management during these last years in the three companies that you can see here. Motesque, where I'm the current CFO, is a health tech startup based in US and Germany, providing cloud biomechanic solutions in the field of healthcare and sports performance. So Audible is a subsidiary of Amazon and is a global leader of audiobooks. And Zalando is European leader of fashion, online fashion. Thanks, Larissa. Next slide, please. So at Motesque, the cash flow is super important because we are still a startup. And one of the first steps that I did in our journey as a value creator was to create internal awareness. And to that purpose, one of the things that we did was to link the OKRs of each employee to cash flow KPIs. And to that purpose, then we moved ahead, building guidance to external parties. And this is now where we are currently, right before the digitalization of all the processes related to the cash flow management. That will bring some challenges, but we are fully prepared for that, and we know that we have to implement for the next level, that is to take off and make Motesque a very successful company globally. Next slide, please. Some highlights for Motesque in 2021. So we plan to scale globally, to bring to the market new software as a service products, and to also initiate our Series B planning. We have a very satisfactory cash flow position right now, and we expect to be successful during the following month. Next slide. I'd like to share my experience at Audible, and as a subsidiary of Amazon. FP&A in this case regarding cash flows is rather a value architect. And what does it mean? So it's basically a support for the strategic decisions that the senior leaders have to make. In that case, for example, we're focused on deciding if whether we'll go to credit or all-you-can-listen models. We're also focused on the global digitalization of all our processes. And also we were in the position to influence positively how the cash flow was managed and dealt with. Next slide. And some highlights. So in that case, cash was not really the primary problem, and the investing activities related to the cash flow were also rather positive because the company was relying on recurring revenues as it was having a subscription model. And regarding the operating activities, it was also neutral in this case with a good management at global scale. Next slide. At Zalando, it was super interesting because in that case, I'll call that the FP&A position was rather a value strategist. And why? Because it had to bring together talents, all the business intelligence teams, the operational sides that being an e-commerce company has a strong investment and therefore strong cash flow investment in the building of new warehouses and automation, for example. Bringing together also the digital transformation processes into the financial planning. And the state of the whole digitalization processes of cash flow was rather very advanced in terms of value added to the company. Next slide. And some highlights in this case, it was very focused on profitability and growth. Zalando managing very efficiently all the working capital, how it was investing in warehouse and automation and the tech, inclusively the digitalization of all financial processes, as I already mentioned. And the financing ratios were very positive as well in this case, with strong liquidity and strong cash flow position. And last but not least, I'd like to share with you my guiding principles based on everything that I experienced and learned during my working journey so far. And first, in terms of automation, we always call that cash flow automation is in fact the Champions League of planning, because everyone primarily guides the company and drives and steers the company based on P&L. But now with the new normal, cash is the king. And being the king means that cash liquidity targets should be more important than the P&L target is at the moment. And to do that, it's very important from my point of view to keep working capital slightly below zero, to have always a strong grip on approval of investments, meaning to take and to double down just on investments that have higher returns than the hurdle or risk rates. And regarding the financing cash flows, to have optimal debt equity ratios to maximize the company valuation. And this is, in short, the summary of my presentation. Thank you, Larissa. Back to you.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for those great insights across a number of companies. Really valuable. I would like to ask Jose to comment on this, on cash flow scenario planning, on cash flow management. Jose, what would be your commentaries?
Sure. I think, again, this is very interesting, David. I think cash flow is not valued as it should be. I think coming from a startup like David is mentioning, it's critical, right? As we mature, we kind of forget cash flow is an important item, and that is a problem, because then linking to what I just said, when a financial crisis hits or any crisis hits, cash flow is immediately depleted, right? Cash disappears. So I think what David is mentioning is very important, independently of the stage of the company. We tend to forget in more stable, mature companies. We unfortunately only remind ourselves of its importance when things go wrong. So I think a lot of learnings for every company in every stage of the spectrum. Thanks, David. I think very interesting.
Thank you so much, Jose. You're absolutely right. The majority of companies still have a setup for their planning process that is around profit and loss account, and not so many companies have this three-way modeling for planning and forecasting. Matt, what would be your key takeaways on your additional points on this?
Yeah, thanks, Larissa. Very similar to what you guys have heard already. It's the importance of cash flow at different sizes. I think the comments about it being like, as you mature, you start to forget about it. It's actually valid on both ends. It's valid when you're a startup that have now merged and has been growing. And also sometimes if you are the acquiring organizations dealing with subsidiaries, that becomes sometimes a big issue, at least for us. You tend to forget that these organizations actually could run out of cash flow at some point when you least expect it. And even as a government, we have controlled entities where we had the same scenario at one point, similar to subsidiaries, where we think, okay, these ones, it'll be just additional burden for them to force them to do this that frequently and that regularly, until one day on a Friday morning, I get a call that they actually had an issue and they were trying to manage and they couldn't, and they're running out of cash. We had to scramble Friday afternoon to get them $20 million in order to pay for their obligations and salaries for the next 2 weeks. That was a reminder for us that it's really important to apply this at all levels of the organization, especially if you're a large conglomerate. You seem to focus on big subsidiaries, but you have to focus on all level, even the smallest ones, because that's where they hurt you when you least expect it.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you for those valuable reminders and checkpoints. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, David. Let us double check what is happening in the world of our community. This is the timing for the next polling question. Let me launch the second polling question. And it's all about your cash flow at the situation of a new normal. I'm launching the poll. You will see it in a moment. And if you can start voting straight away. Have you recently adjusted your cash flow planning process to the new normal requirements? Please start voting. Choose one of those that the best description for you. Yes, it works well for us. Yes, but it is work in progress for us. No, we didn't adjust. No need to update because our process always been great. Please, can you continue to vote? More than 50% of you voted. Just a few moments. Please continue to vote. Choose only one option. And I'm about to close the poll. I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing the results with all of you. Interestingly enough, we do this survey at different continents and different countries. And it's very familiar, it's very consistent. The trends are global, definitely. So there were no adjustments for a quarter of you. It's still work in progress for more than half of you. And 18% of you adjusted this, and it was a great success. But actually 7% of you were future ready. There were no need to update. I would like to ask David to comment on this. What do you think?
Yeah, sure, Larissa. So I really understand this voting and the fact that for many is still a work in progress. Well, now more than ever, it's time to, from my perspective, rationalize. And secondly, to optimize and then think about grow again. So definitely there is a good path here to go. And for the ones that it works well, I'm glad to see that too.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. Thank you for all your votes. I'm hiding the results. And this is the timing to go on. We are looking at the third facet of the new normal FP&A. And it's all about digital FP&A, agile, adaptable, quick, and dynamic. And obviously, it's all about predictive, prescriptive, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Matt, this is your stage.
Right.
We have a representative of government organization, and it's amazing what you're already doing in your organization, Matt. Obviously, it's with your leadership and with your knowledge, but it's all about moving to the leading analytical stage, a case study from your company. You're welcome. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Larissa, and welcome everybody. Again, just to remind everyone, like as much as we try to do it, again, we're moving ahead in the government. It's still a proof of concept, but for us, it's actually a major step because you don't want to actually be still behind in these. So I'll be a bit practical about this to go straight into a typical case of what we just run into. So in this sector that we manage, I have the portfolio of education within the government of Ontario, which is run by 72 organizations. Problem we're having is that we do tend to look at budget times when we have a forecast, which is called here as estimates, and then we have the revised budget in the middle of the year, and then we have financial statements. We tend to have large variances. They can go up to $300 million. This seems to actually cause us some problem we tried to address it in different ways. We tried to address it before in terms of using policies, procedures, etc. We still had some issues, and we certainly wanted to address that because it affects accuracy. So that's about 1% of the total budget that we're spending, but still it could be deployed to something else. COVID-19 has been unusual this year and actually presented other challenges because all of a sudden we had to do rapid iterations of what is the forecasted spend. And actually, interestingly enough, to add to this is when you're trying to, for example, you need to spend more money because of social distancing, you need smaller classrooms, etc. We actually need to spend a lot of money to hire additional teachers. So we do that. Now the organizations are telling us they're running out of teachers to hire. They have the money, but they can't find people. So actually hire them to come and do it because they saturated the sector. They wanted money for capital investment. We gave additional CapEx expenditures for COVID-19. But again, they all of a sudden they end up fighting for contractors. All the companies now are saturated. They're responding to the needs. They can't find anyone to do it unless they import them from another country. So this took us into an issue where now we're expecting another big variance again by the end of the year. We have no idea of the size, magnitude, or how would it work. So to try to deal with this, we try to look at machine learning, and we'll look at the proof of concept in the next slide, please. What we try to do is we try to look at proof of concept of establishing how machine learning can look at past behavior and try to predict what the outcome would be in order to predict what the variance will be. We're not going to necessarily try to tell them to change the reporting, but at least we're going to know ahead of time so we can redeploy our cash appropriately. We can probably go into the details of this, but I don't think anyone will be interested. Plus, it would probably take a whole day. But suffice to say, what we'll say is, like, we tried to do 2 iterations. We tried first to focus on a typical linear regression model to find out from a statistical perspective what our results will be, and then led to the next step, which is in the next slide, where we did we looked at the machine learning, which is using artificial intelligence to look at past behavior and try to predict the results, which right now we're still looking at about 5% variance that we're still managing between the results predicted at the beginning and the results predicted at the end. So it's still a work in progress, but it actually already gave us a lot of additional insight, and actually also helps us a lot to not rely on manual assumptions and manual intervention, but really have the computer look at the data, try to get the additional data, and revise the model on its own without having to rely on us redoing it every time, which could be time and effort consuming as well. So moving to the next slide, please. So next step, because this is a proof of concept, like we've done the first phase, we got to about 5% into range, which was pretty good. And now we're going to be looking to expand the data set. One thing that we tend to find it a bit nice within a government environment is that we do have a lot of data, and we have big data warehouses. And even if we need additional data, we can always ask for it, and we'll be able to get it or have the reporting started on it without necessarily having to struggle through that. So we're trying to expand the data set. We're going to be looking at the improving our models and have models for different organizations. And also with respect to COVID-19, we already separated the impact of it through separate reporting, which will help us deal with the predicting what would happen if we get another crisis down the road. So moving to the last slide then, please. So there's the key takeaways. This is where I wanted to spend a little bit of time on, and I think some might notice that I didn't spend too much time talking about the details or the technical parts of how we implemented machine learning, because at the end of the day, there's a common belief that the biggest challenge you'll have will be actually technology, but really you find that that becomes the least of your problems. The large issues that you deal with are actually more strategic, sometimes more related to people and human, not necessarily about what technology you're going to be using. So a few takeaways here. First, you want to talk, if you want to go to digital FP&A, whether you're still using spreadsheets and you want to go and do some automation, or you're already having automated interfaces and you want to go into AI, you want to make sure that you align it with your overall strategy and with how your company is going, because you actually want to make sure that there is a support, because you're going to run into glitches, you're going to run into proof of concept not giving you the data you wanted. You want the support throughout the organizations at that time. The second thing is the major concern when you're talking about AI rollout within any organization, and not only in FP&A, is job security. I had my share of that as well, where all of a sudden people you're going to be relying on to drive these processes are actually now worried that the robots will be replacing their jobs. And you know, even if you say that's not the case, it doesn't necessarily buy you a lot of credibility there. So, but what we usually tend to say here, when we talk about human being eliminated out of jobs because of robots, it's like talking about overpopulating Mars, which is really far-fetched and far away into the future. Really, what we're looking at this point is machine is not a magic solution, is not the answer to everything. Machine is good at running large data and large processes in record time, but it's not good at figuring things out. Humans, on the other hand, have limited effort capacity, but they're really good at making sense of the environment around them. So really what we have to do is the best strategy is you're not going to get robots to replace a human, but you're going to have two working together. Each one is doing what they want to do best. Case in point here is MIT, which is a university where I did my master's studies in Massachusetts, tend to be a big target for hackers around the world for a number of reasons, whether it's financial or ego or many other reasons. It doesn't matter whether it's because of corporate espionage or if it's because of simply someone trying to brag about it. They have a lot of attacks. They used to have human looking at algorithms, monitoring network traffic to decide if there is a suspicious activity or not. And it used to capture a lot of stuff that they tend to block and not capture others that sometimes you need to deal with them after the fact. But they replaced that with machine learning, with an artificial intelligence algorithm that is actually looking at behavior, looking at detection, and try to predict them. It gave a lot more results than a human being was able to capture, but also it gave a lot of false negatives, so false positives. A lot of those were actually valid activities. It just the machine thought that they're actually suspicious attacks. So that was actually really the idea behind it. So when they got the best results is when they hired humans and they had actually both machines using AI and human analysts working together to do it. Then they actually increase the number of detections, but also the increase in number of real detections and not false ones. Last 2 points talk about is policy changes. This is a big thing for governments, but also is actually could also be very relevant to large organizations, especially the ones that manage the large sector. When you're actually, sometimes you can make strategic decisions at the top that would actually change an entire market or change an entire sector or basically change how people are using things today. So when you do this, sometimes you struggle about how is machine learning looking at past behavior, trying to predict the future using this, because you're basically going to change the future with one decision. You know, whether you're Amazon or you're Microsoft, you could still do that. So what we do right now is looking at those policy decisions, whether you're going to pass a regulation as a government that will change how people behave, or you're a company that is actually launching something new in the market that will revolutionize the environment, you actually look at the predictive impact of that, and we model it as an additional layer, because then when you want to revise that, you only revise your own assumptions, you don't have to revise the entire model. And then last point to close is, when you're trying to roll something like this, there is a big factor, an important balance that you want to strike. If you try to just say, okay, I'm going to take all my data, if you have a lot of it, and then throw the machine learning and expect it to solve my problems, you will struggle a bit, because again, machines are not good at figuring things out the same way humans are, and machines are only good at using what you instruct them to do. On the other hand, you want to use your business insights from your staff that would actually drive what these models will work through. But the risk there is that if you rely on it too much, you actually end up eliminating or marginalizing the benefits of AI, and then becoming just a matter of doing a manual predictive analytics and trying to label it as AI. So it is a fine balance you want to strike. You don't want human insight to influence the models, but at the same time, you don't want the model to run it as a black box. So this balance, which is really important in any machine learning implementation, actually takes us back to one of the points I made here, which is the best implementation of AI is a combination of human intelligence and machine intelligence together, but not necessarily one or the other. And this is really important, and this addresses the job of the future and what it will look like. So I'll stop here and turn back if anyone has any comments.
Matt, thank you so much for fantastic insights. Wonderful to see how government organizations started to implement digital policies, and in particular in FP&A and finance. Incredible. I would like to ask Chris to comment on this.
Yes, thanks, Larissa, and great presentation, Med. Thank you for that. And I just want to kind of focus on one of the points that you made there about the blending of the strengths between humans and machines, the combination of the two. From what we're seeing in terms of use of ML and AI, it's going to help organizations to replace some of the low-grade, high-volume, repetitive tasks that sometimes many of us have had to do in our roles, but replace these with machines instead of a person, leaving the people time to really look at the outputs of the process a bit more. They'll then have time to spend on more higher value tasks and activities, the things that humans are good at, looking at strategic initiatives that perhaps they haven't had so much time to spend on in the past. So let's look to where AI and ML can help make the role of finance professionals, I guess, a richer, more enjoyable and more rewarding personal experience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. David, what would be your commentary on this?
Thanks to all. So I'm really fascinated by Matt's use cases for the government of Ontario, because the governmental use of predictive analytics and machine learning models to the purpose of creating the best budget is a great example for other countries as well. And also, I like to add that do not be afraid to really integrate ML or AI analytics in your budget activities. But yeah, I also agree that it's important to hire the right tech talent to support you in that journey. Back to you.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for your commentary. And Matt, once again, thank you for fantastic presentation. This is the time to hear from our audience. We really would like to understand where you are in terms of your analytics journey. So I would like to open the thought polling question. I'm launching the polling question, and it's all about the type of analytics you currently use for your decision-making process. Please, can you start voting? Looking at your organization, what questions to support your decision-making are you currently focusing on? Is it what happened, descriptive analytics? Is it how and why did it happen, diagnostic analytics? Is it what will happen next, predictive analytics? Or what to do to make it happen, prescriptive analytics? Or what did I learn? What is the best, cognitive analytics? So please, if you can share those results with us, please continue to vote. It's all about where you are, how forward-looking you are in your analytical maturity, and how you support the decision-making process. I can see that more than 50% of you voted. Please, can you continue to vote? And I'm about to close the polling question. Please, just a few seconds. Please continue to vote. Just a few seconds. I'm closing the polling question, and I'm sharing the results with everyone. You can see that 12% of you are still at descriptive analytics, 31% at diagnostic analytics, 38%, which is amazing, already using predictive analytics, and 14% using prescriptive, and 6% using cognitive. I think this is absolutely fantastic result. Of more than half of you really already at great analytical transformation journey. I would like to ask Matt to comment on this.
Thank you, Larissa. And frankly, it's not surprising, but also it's actually a good confirmation to see that the majority will fall within either diagnostic or predictive analytics, because frankly, that's what this is actually going to be all about, and this is what it actually helps. If you wanted to do something more like just looking at the descriptive analytics, like a lot of that, there's other solutions for this, not necessarily going into something complex. But frankly, right now, when you look at organizations, they want to actually use the past to predict the future, but also sometimes it's not always easier unless you're actually in a very routine environment, which is not necessarily the case in a dynamic world of today. It actually is a lot. It shows that more and more organizations are actually seeing that, you know, the world is changing. It's changing very fast. Now there is no time to try to rely on a large number of people trying to run different manual models to try to tell us, okay, what decision should we make, or to actually try to do those inside a closed meeting room. It is actually, there is a need to incorporate technology in these, and organizations are now finding out that they're going to lag behind unless they actually adopt this. And this is the same case for governments as well, and that's why we're doing the projects that I mentioned we're doing today.
Thank you for your commentary, Matt, and thank you to all of you who voted. Thank you so much for sharing your results with us. I'm hiding the results, and this is the timing to look at the fourth facet of the new normal FP&A. Obviously, it's all about technology. It's all about the architecture of your FP&A process and how you use and how you utilize the technology that is available at the moment. I would like to ask Chris Grandi from SAP to share the latest trends and thought leadership on the subject. Chris, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you very much, Larissa. Well, I'm going to take a change of pace here a little bit. We've heard some really good inspirational stories from organizations using technology. I'm going to take a more holistic view, I guess, of the role of technology and why it's important for FP&A professionals. I'm going to start off with a quote here. The science of today is the technology of tomorrow. And that quote from physicist Edward Teller. It's quite a thought-provoking quote in many ways. And I think it's quite true. If we can imagine it, quite often we actually create it. And we can see this kind of imagination in the world all around us. The legacy we have from the steam engine, electricity, rocket power, the internet, iPod, iPhone, electric cars, self-driving cars, and this thing that I wear on my wrist as well, you know, smartwatches. As a race, we are consistently seeking to make things better than they were before, to enrich our lives, to deal with constant change, and to be more fulfilled and more successful. And in organizations as well, we're constantly having to deal with change. This could be social, political, environmental. And we use technology quite often to help us deal with such change. And when we combine technology with the other building blocks of efficient business systems, people and process, it can help us to improve and to be more successful, efficient, competitive and agile. And what's modern technology then, the title of this topic? I suggest that this is technology that's relevant and useful in its time, or maybe to adapt it in Teller's terms, perhaps we could refer to this as the technology of today. Next slide, please. So 2020, as we know, has been a year with a change of epic proportions. The COVID-19 pandemic sent shockwaves through the fabric of business and our everyday lives. But what has this experience meant for finance professionals, for CFOs, planners, controllers? And for many, it's been a painful process. The rapid pace of change has pushed many organizations to survival mode, with pressures on finance and finance systems in areas like cash flow, planning and profitability. But what it's also done is to help to shine a light on some areas of business, systems and processes that need to be improved. So that as we start to emerge from these times of great change and uncertainty, we do so stronger, with more flexibility, more resilience, and with more agile systems and processes than we had before. Next slide. In today's business climate, pressure and pains being felt all around the organization, as our customers have been expressing some of their needs and views with us in the past months. We capture some of this on the slide here. You know, in HR, for example, employees working from home more, a new reality for many, me not the least, as you can see from my office behind me. Businesses continue to move online, putting challenges on supply chain, pressure on organizations with huge fixed costs in land and buildings. Sales is being challenged to rethink how to reach customers when the offices are closed. And at the top, organizations are concerned with macroeconomic uncertainty. And in the area of FP&A, there's also pain being felt in areas such as the need to bring planning cycles down, the need to be able to rapidly simulate and evaluate opportunities, or the need for more accurate profit and cost information to identify those areas in the business where value is being created. Flexibility and agility are watchwords associated with these needs, but to address them, organizations will look to technology. The question is finance ready for such technology change? Next slide. The reality here is that while many organizations will be aiming to move to faster and more efficient planning cycles, currently organizations could be using technology solutions that are, quite frankly, falling behind the times. In some instances, it's just no longer modern enough. According to a recent FP&A trends survey, spreadsheets still remain a dominant FP&A tool, with 72% of organizations using them for FP&A processes. And 48% of those organizations said that they still struggle to cope with even managing existing planning processes, let alone create speedier and more efficient ones. So clearly here, there is a need to advance and speed planning cycles, and new and improved technology is needed. Next slide, please. So what are modern technologies? What is the technology of today that could be accessible and of benefit to FP&A professionals? I suggest just 3 things here to consider, 3 things which I think is bracketed in that frame of technology of today. The first one being machine learning and AI. We just heard a little bit about this. But these are things that could help organizations to achieve things like the ability to build predictive planning models, the ability to streamline, reduce, and practically eliminate planning cycles, and also be able to access rapid simulations quickly and easily in real time to feed decisions in the moment. In the area of analytics, it's no secret we're becoming more data-driven as organizations, and analytics can help us to reveal data in the form of information which will help to feed our FP&A cycles. We can start to access real-time analytics to help improve business decisions. We can look to embed experience data alongside operational data into our analysis to help understand the reasons for customer behavior and the effect on the performance outcomes, and factor that into planning cycles too. And we can start to see the story behind the numbers from a customer's viewpoint and the influences that impact their decisions. And in the area of collaboration as well, we've got tools that will help us to align plans across the organization, to help us be ready and responsive to changing circumstances, including disruptive events like we've all experienced recently, and to be faster in making informed and more confident decisions. Next slide. In practical terms, though, how does such technology help FP&A to improve and to build those better and more efficient and more resilient business systems that we need? Well, we've already heard today from some super cases of transformation where businesses are being transformed through the use of modern technology approaches. In addition to that, I just wanted to share 3 examples where some of our customers are feeling some benefits. Airbus, for example, reducing planning and forecasting cycles and improving their insights with streamlined approach to a cloud-based approach to planning. Graphic Packaging International, they've managed to reduce sales forecasting cycles dramatically by using real-time advanced analytics. And McNess has streamlined their financial reporting, moving from a spreadsheet-based system over to a collaborative, cloud-based approach. And that's just a few examples of many organizations that are feeling the benefits of modern technology. And I included the links to those case studies in the presentation if any of you would like to read further into those. And the next slide, please. So I wanted to just finish with another thought. This is a very recent one, actually. I attended a LinkedIn training course recently, which was on the topic of social media in business, where Ryan Holmes, who's the CEO of Hootsuite, which is a social media dashboard, was talking about the business use of social media. And Ryan said, winners that adapt to new technologies ultimately are the winners in business. I quite liked that quote, and when I heard it, I thought it would be very relevant to the topic I'm talking about today. And I think all I'm going to do is just let you consider, to ponder that quote as you think about your own approach to the use of modern technology in business. Thanks for your time today, and over to you, Larissa.
Chris, thank you so much for sharing your thought leadership and experience with us. Definitely technology is a huge enabler of analytical transformation and FP&A. But then I would like to ask Michael to comment on this from the point of view of skills and recruitment trends. So how would you like to comment, Michael?
Thanks, Chris, and a very clear and great presentation. For me, we just found out in this presentation that finance brings a change by its own power of innovation. That finance also has to constantly evolve to assimilate the external change. And finally, that finance manages the change by its central position within the organization. So it's clearly a question of tools, but also and mainly a matter of people. That's what is clearly highly interested for us. Finance is always leading and actually covering more than just finance, with an evident impact on its own intrinsic evolution. And we'll be glad to tell you more about it. But thanks, Chris. It was great.
Thank you so much for your commentary, Michael. Chris, thank you so much for your presentation. Definitely, people are leading analytical transformation, and I would say that from my own experience, from what I see around the globe, the best analytical maturity projects, the best analytical transformation projects, they are led by finance. Now, this is the timing to look at the last polling question. We would like to hear from you. We would like to understand what is happening with your collaborative and flexible technology right now. I'm launching the poll, and please, if you can start voting straight away. Do you currently use modern collaborative flexible technology for FP&A? Obviously, Excel is not the collaborative technology. And select one of those. Yes, we do. No, we don't, but we do plan to implement it in the near future. No, we don't, and we don't plan to implement this in the near future. So if you can kindly vote, it would be interesting to see what is happening in your world. Please continue to vote. More than almost 60% of you voted. I will give a few seconds more before I share the results with everyone. Please continue to vote. Few seconds, and I'm closing the poll right now and sharing the results with everyone. Interesting to see that more than half of you either already have this technology or you are planning to implement. 40% of, almost 40% of you planning to implement in the future. But 34% actually don't have this technology. Probably it's all Excel and don't plan to implement in the future. Chris, any commentaries from your side?
Well, yeah, that's a really interesting result, actually, Larissa. I mean, from my side, we do see more and more organizations wanting to engage with a more collaborative technology to particularly engage in their planning process, which, you know, is a process that we all engage in at some time. And so, you know, it's interesting to see that 40% say that they do plan to implement it. That's not a surprise. Perhaps 35 almost percent of not planning to use it is more of a surprise to me. I do harbor a small suspicion here that we might see more organizations start to move to more collaborative tools, merely from the fact we're all having to engage in different working practices, you know, with the effect of COVID, and we're working from home. I mean, how many of us used to use Zoom and web conferencing so much as we do now? So perhaps we'll see some effect of that in the way that we work in the future as well.
Thank you for your commentary, Chris, and thank you for your votes, everyone. I'm hiding the result. And this is the time to look at the last facet of the new normal FP&A. So it's all about FP&A skills and recruitment, FP&A skills and roles. We discussed analytical transformation, we discussed scenario planning and cash flow forecasting and the role of technology. But obviously, it's very important what sort of team we have and what skills people have to implement it. Michael Della, who is Director of Finance and Accounting at Page Group, Michael Page. Michael?
Thank you, Larissa. Thanks a lot. So let's take a look at the key role of the FP&A, its place and position. I would say the new trends in FP&A background and soft skills, and finally, how to attract the right talents. If I start by the end, I would say that the keyword are transformation and knowledge sharing. In the time of constant changes we are all facing, the FP&A is becoming the real leader in finance transformation and is at the heart of the other expected transformations. There is no strong finance any longer without a real commitment to transformation. So being a business partner, supporting business decision and helping top management making the right decisions, the FP&A has to assume its central role as leader, driver, and conductor, and also binding agent in a way, being clearly at the crossroads. It makes FP&A stronger than ever. Next slide, please. So it doesn't seem simple at first glance when you have a look on this graphic. That's because it is not. But clearly, FP&A is interconnected with all disciplines today. Finance, for sure. Other finance, accounting, but also IT, and now data owners, operation, business. The challenge of the FP&A is to progress within a complex and diversified environment, adjusting its language, being, I would say, like a chameleon in a way. The FP&A has now to perfectly understand others and also new disciplines, typically in data management, in order to be able to aspirate a part of their knowledge, to exploit all the resources and to serve them at the same time. Next slide, please. Discussing the job specification with clients for recruitment in FP&A, when I do analyze job description and job boards, when we obtain feedbacks on what works and doesn't work, again, discussing with CFO or managing director, we clearly observe new requirements, new expectations. Finance is no more compartmentalized, so we are looking for new knowledge in order to optimize the global understanding and to be sure to be able to adapt to the complexity of the organization. So the link with constant project transformation and digitalization implies to gain in technicity for data management, an information system for sure, but also in basic accounting principle, for instance. And in terms of soft skills, in addition to the clear leadership skills, agility today is more than a strong must-have, as you can see. Please, next slide, Larissa. So, finally, do not forget what you really experience. Assessing first the barriers to change you're facing, and do not forget how demanding is the new generation, the new talent generation, who has maybe not the same expectation you had. I mean yourself. When I'm talking about barriers, it's about reality of the organization. We're talking about process. You can face with a lack of efficiency. You can face with obsolete IT system, etc. When I speak about executive board, I mean the lack of transparency you need to drive your organization, your finance, sometimes the lack of consideration or understanding in the finance added value as well. And very important, the people as key barriers, the difficulties in hiring and retaining the right talent, the resistance to change when you are involved in transformation projects, and the lack of time to train, as you need to constantly adapt your competencies to the situation. So I would say my key advice would be, first of all, to know yourself and the maturity of your financial culture. Know what you would yourself, why, sorry, you would yourself join your department if you would have to rewrite the story. Onboarding, sorry, you need to onboard the right skills at the right time. Do not try to reproduce, but anticipate the next move. As well, onboard the right people at the right place. Make, I would say, the right move before recruiting, and so elaborate perspectives for all. And finally, prepare. Prepare relevant storytelling about your vision. It's so important, and continually reinforce employer and department branding, internally and externally.
Michael, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Very valuable key points to remember. And what I would like to say that it continues to be the point when up to 70 to 80% of CFOs say that FP&A is the most difficult position to fill. For the reason that it's not just accounting anymore, isn't it? It's not controlling anymore. There are so many different roles and so many skills required. Thank you so much, Michael. It was the last session. And before Q&A session that will be open in a moment, and you're welcome to continue to send us your questions. I would like to make this key conclusions and recommendations part. Just to remind you about analytics maturity model, it's a journey for all of us, obviously. Today we looked at the leading analytical stage. We looked at leading analytical stage from the point of view of 5 facets for the new normal FP&A. A very practical experience from our panelists. Now I would like to ask each panelist to give their 30 seconds key takeaways from the session. Jose, we will start from you. What would be your 30 seconds key takeaways, please?
So my key takeaways would be scenario planning is critical for any companies, independently on the stage they are. The environment changes so rapidly, as we could see today, unfortunately, with this pandemic, that we need to be prepared for any scenario. So any investment that you should be thinking in this area, I think it's a valuable investment. That's the real lesson we've been having since the last 5 years, where we started investing in this type of analysis.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jose. David, what would be your key takeaways from this session?
Sure. My key takeaways are that in the new normal, it's time to first rationalize your cash, digitalize processes, and after then think about grow again. And do not focus only on the P&L targets, but also focus on cash flow targets. And last but not the least, when you digitalize your cash flow processes, bear in mind that this is the Champions League of the planning processes in the new normal. Thanks, Larissa.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David. Matt, what would be your very quick 30 seconds key takeaways from this session?
Thanks. So, I mean, I would assume at this point, most organizations are starting to see the benefits of digital FP&A. So I won't actually reiterate that, but if you're looking at machine learning, artificial intelligence, what's really important is I'll summarize in two things. One is make sure that you scale and adapt the solution to what your organization needs, because it depends on how much data you have, what is the level of complexities, what kind of predictive analytics. Sometimes it's easier to fall in the trap of looking at implementing something shiny and complex, but usually that has adverse effects if your need is something simple. Usually simple is much better. And we have plenty of cases that I won't go through that, but it is actually, trust me on this, it is actually, if you go with something simple that gives results, it's much better than going with a complex solution that actually adds burden and complexities and slows down your organization. And the second thing is, as I spoke about before, the future of digital FP&A, or the machine learning in particular, is it's not artificial intelligence being that machines are going to run by themselves. It's a combination of human intelligence and machine intelligence. So it's always good to keep that in mind and also to communicate it through your organization. Otherwise, you may run into obstacles. And at that point, I think I'm touching into Michael's presentation here, but when you're looking at this, because the future now is machine or human running the machines and working in collaboration with artificial intelligence, it is very important at this time to look at what are the future skills that you're going to need if you are implementing artificial intelligence in the future, because the skill set that you need in FP&A professionals are going to be different than the skill set that you had up to this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you. Chris, your half-a-minute takeaways.
Sure. Thank you. Well, firstly, I'd like to say, please keep an eye on modern technologies that could be important and relevant to your business, but don't forget technology is just a tool. It only provides benefits when combined with people and process to create efficient business systems. And sometimes it's easy for us to become ultra focused on the technology tools and the process side, assuming that people will just come along for the ride. So in addition, you might want to consider what you can do organizationally and culturally to encourage the right kind of technology culture so that your people are engaged and happy to join you as you transform FP&A using modern technology. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris. And the final key takeaway from Michael.
Yes, Larissa. So I'll be concrete and talk quickly about recruitment process. When you are recruiting to reinforce your department or to align it with the right competencies, you are always and normally expecting candidates to sell themselves. Please do not forget to sell the organization and yourself. And do not forget as well that candidates are looking for meaning, learning, and obviously happiness. And it is so important.
Absolutely. This is a good closing key point, Michael. Thank you so much. This is the timing for Q&A session. I would like to remind you that it's easy to send your question to us through your text box. Please continue to send it, even if we don't have enough time to answer. We will do this offline. And the Q&A session is starting right now. And Jose, the first question is to you.
Okay.
How long did it take for you to go from Excel to this tool, and how many resources did it need?
Oh, I don't have the resources needed, but it was substantial. So it was funny in a sense that we were supposed to do this in 3 years, and due to bad review, let's call it, or feedback from the regulators, we had to do this in 1 year. So we did this in 1 year, again, not in the optimal stage, but it took a couple of more years, but we did this in a year.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jose. The next question is to David. David, in other words, after your presentation, can we say that based on your work journey, automation of planning processes is a key to present the options and to take the best decisions in terms of cash flow management?
So my answer short is yes. It's super important, especially if you work in a large organization. where you have to steer and manage many stakeholders, many verticals, many budgets or sub-budgets within the whole planning process. It's fundamental to make it quick, efficient, and effective.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for your answer. Matt, the next question is to you. It's a very long question about mastering data management. So we see that the major challenge is master data management, structure the data in the consistent way to be able to leverage it in full through advanced models and technology. Do you have insights on how to bring focus on this aspect, which is less exciting than investment in technology? What would be your answer, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Larissa. Like very interesting question and very important. I'm just going to make an assumption based on the question that that this coming from the fact that there is a large amount of data that spans across a long time period, and it is actually not consistent for you to be able to run into machine learning for that. So with this assumption, there is actually within the organizations, sometimes you have to make a case that you need to invest in preparing your data first. And sometimes what really we found actually useful, especially for us, is as much as that was a pain, trying to use shortcuts does not usually work. You try to actually say, okay, we'll go with what we have and try to find a roundabout way, does not usually work. So what actually happens, though, what we did find is, well, the problem seems to be big because you have a long history of data that's all different formats and gives you different information. Can you actually get all of that and standardize it? We actually also benefited from the fact that all of that is actually time limited because you have a finite set of data, however big or small it is. If you actually if you invest the time and effort and the money to fix that, it is a one-time investment, but then going forward, your model will capture your ongoing need and the data feeds that you have. So usually what sometimes you're trying to make a case internally, what actually does help is focusing on the fact that this is a one-time thing that would have a long-time ongoing benefits, rather than thinking of it as just a necessary additional burden that you have to take.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Matt. The next question is to you, Chris. For some organizations in my area, investment in FP&A tools is not a priority if not demanded by the regulators. How to make their mindset evolve on this subject? What would be your answer, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes FP&A isn't seen as the priority. I mean, I've been in this area for quite a number of years, and I certainly see that. What I would say is that, there is a wide range of tools within FP&A, some of which may or may not be relevant. So look at the things that might be relevant to your organization. If it's a regulated industry, perhaps there are tools that will help you to manage your compliance with those regulations a lot more easily. And look to what other organizations are doing as well. There are some super case stories out there, globally, about the use of FP&A in regulated industry and all industry for that matter of fact. And take a look at what they're doing as well. They'll give inspiration and shine a light as to where the possibilities lie. Back to you, Larissa.
Thank you so much, Chris. I was on mute, sorry. Thank you for answering this question. And we are going to the last question for you, Michael. But please remember that we will be able to answer. We have more questions than we're able to answer during this time. We will be answering in offline mode. Michael, the question is to you. I'm interested what you describe as department branding. How do you define this? How can an FP&A department differentiate itself, not just within the organization, but in the macro market? So what would be your answer to this?
very relevant, and we could discuss about it for a long time. When I say branding, I mean when we're talking about HR marketing, HR branding, it's something very important today, and sometimes we're just expecting the organization to do the work itself. I think that the department itself has to brand, to be able to brand his own department. It means to communicate on the social network, as instance. Maybe some of them are doing it, some other do not. I think internally to communicate as well about the realization. I could just provide you with a simple example. In France, but I'm pretty sure that it exists everywhere, there is some like competition in finance, and people, CFO, head of controlling, etc., will introduce a great project, a great transformation project, sometimes an LBO, etc. And this is very interesting because it allows the department to gain in exposure. And I'm pretty sure that today we need to be all branded, and the department itself has to play the game.
Thank you so much, Michael. An excellent reminder for everyone. With this, I would like to conclude this session, this Q&A session. We have more questions. As I said, we will send you answers a little bit later. But before we do this, I would like to remind you about a number of digital meetings that we are holding at the moment. So about so many different and interesting subjects. The registration process is open. So please continue to register, and it would be wonderful to see you again at the meetings. And finally, I would like to say thank you so much to our incredible panel, to our very international panel and very experienced panel. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today. Very practical, very well delivered, and it was really exciting to collaborate with you on this. I would like to say thank you so much to our sponsors and partners, to SAP and to Michael Page. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for supporting us around the globe. And finally, I would like to say thank you so much to all of you for being here with us. So this is the regional event, UK and France, but there were representatives from so many different countries as well. So thank you for staying with us. Please remember that we are moving FP&A to the next level. And if for some reasons we didn't cover something during this meeting, you know how to find me, you know my email. Please share your experience and please share your case studies with us. And finally, when I conclude, when I close this webinar, please stay in order to share your survey with us. We would like to understand how we can make it better. All the best and see you very, very soon. All the best. Bye-bye.